Good afternoon. It's Friday, the 9th of January. I'm Erin Viner, and this is IBA News broadcasting from Jerusalem. We open in France, where at this hour, 2 people have reportedly been killed in a shootout at a kosher supermarket in eastern Paris, where a terrorist armed with 2 guns has taken several people hostage there, possibly as many as 5, all believed to be women and children. There have also been unconfirmed reports that the suspect is believed to be the same gunman who killed a policewoman in the southern suburb of Paris on Thursday. President Francois Hollande has ordered the nation's top security services to the scene, where firefighters and emergency medical personnel have also gathered. We'll bring you updates on that story as it develops. And meanwhile, security forces are in a standoff with the 2 suspected Islamist terrorists who are believed to have carried out the massacre at the Charlie Hebdo satirical newspaper office in Paris 2 days ago. Saeed Kouachi and his brother Sharif have reportedly taken a woman hostage at a printing house in the small industrial town of Damartin-Gaulle, near the Charles de Gaulle International Airport, 40 kilometers northeast of the French capital. Hundreds of security forces, helicopters and ambulances have been deployed to the area where the brothers are believed to be holed up. A French lawmaker inside of the command post told local media that telephone contact has been established and that the 2 suspects have expressed their desire to die as martyrs. They are suspected in the storming of an office at Charlie Hebdo, where they opened fire with another suspect, killing 10 staff members and 2 police guards, injuring 11 others, 4 critically, while reportedly shouting Allahu Akbar. Their whereabouts were detected after a driver whose vehicle was carjacked by the suspects notified the police. U.S. authorities say that both of the suspects are on the United States no-fly list and that Saeed Kouachi traveled to Yemen in 2011, where he was in direct contact with al-Qaeda. His brother Sharif was convicted of terrorism in 2008 in France for trying to join forces fighting in Iraq. Meanwhile, evidence is reportedly adding up to indicate a link between all of the terror attacks in Paris. The suspect in yesterday's shooting death of a policewoman in a Paris suburb is a member of the same jihadist group as the Kouachi brothers, according to French police sources, who added that the assailant behind the Montrouge attack is acquainted with both brothers. He wore a bulletproof vest as he opened fire with an assault rifle and a handgun before fleeing the site in a Renault, and remains at large, and as we mentioned earlier, may be tied to the incident that is unfolding right now at this hour at the kosher supermarket in the French capital. According to French Foreign Minister Bernard Cazeneuve, French Interior Minister, 88,000 security forces have been deployed in the search for the suspects of the Wednesday and Thursday terror attacks. Here in Jerusalem, the snowstorm began in earnest this afternoon with very heavy flurries covering the city and other hilly areas in white. Much of the heaviest snowfall came down in the Etzion block and the biblical city of Hebron. Schools remained closed, and the north-south highway 60 was also sealed, with no access to many settlements in the area. Children had a great time outdoors, playing all the usual winter-related games, and many snowball fights have been reported throughout the area. Funnily enough, there is too much snow for skiing at the Mount Hermon ski site in the northernmost part of the country, where 1 meter of the white stuff has accumulated in many areas after the 3rd straight day of snowfall. Roads and schools in much of the Galilee and the Golan Heights were also closed, and Tzfat and Metula are largely snowed in. Israelis from the center of the country have been traveling north to view the snow-covered regions, with many using off-road vehicles and 4x4 SUVs to gain access to areas where the roads have been closed. Police estimate that tens of thousands of visitors came to the Golan today, and the police have reissued warnings to off-road drivers and hikers to not cross fences in the Golan into forbidden areas due to the danger of landmines that remain underground from previous wars. Joining me now by telephone to discuss the winter storm is Eliza Razi of the Israel Meteorological Service. Good evening.
Good evening.
Now, it would seem that today we are seeing the heaviest snowfall so far. What can you tell us about what to expect?
Actually, we're pretty much coming to the end of all the snow, at least as far as the central mountain areas are concerned.
I'm glad to hear that.
Basically, we have a few more hours of precipitation from the north to the Negev, and as you said, it's falling as snow in the mountains of the north and the center. Tonight, the precipitation will mostly taper off, but we might have some light showers still falling in the south of the country, and maybe even some flurries in the Negev mountains. Tomorrow morning, we're going to get a break in the precipitation. Temperatures will begin to rise. Tomorrow afternoon, the rain will start again in earnest. We're going to have showers and thunderstorms again, beginning in the north and center tomorrow afternoon. However, by then, Jerusalem will have warmed up to about 4 or 5 degrees, so it'll fall as rain and not as snow. Tomorrow night, that rain will also spread to the south, so tomorrow night will be stormy from the north to the south of the country. Sunday morning, it will die off pretty quickly, and that'll be pretty much the end of the system. On Monday and Tuesday, we're not really expecting any more rain. The skies will begin to clear, temperatures will continue to rise, and the only thing of note then would be that the winds will pick up in the north on Monday and Tuesday, making a chilly effect there. However, for tonight, what I do want to say is that because temperatures will be dropping, it'll be a very cold night with no rain or snow, but it'll still be wet from everything that's already fallen. There is a risk of very icy road conditions in the mountains, so please be careful if you find yourself on the road in the mountains tonight.
Lisa, in fact, I wanted to ask you about that. When can we expect it's really going to be safe to drive? Because of the temperatures being so low, I know that you said that at least until Sunday or Monday it's going to remain pretty stormy, but when can we expect the roads to be cleared and safe to drive again?
Hopefully by tomorrow, in the central mountains at least, everything should be clear and safe to go.
Good.
And then in the mountains of the north, perhaps tomorrow night they might see still a little more snow, and so they'll have to wait until Sunday morning.
Okay, Eliza Razi of the Israel Meteorological Service, thanks so much for being with us this afternoon.
My pleasure.
Stay safe. Ahead of today's events, expressions of support for France from around the world have continued to pour in from leaders and individual citizens. U.S. President Barack Obama made an unannounced visit to the French embassy in Washington, where he paid his respects and offered his condolences to the people of France. Hundreds of people sat in silence at a candlelight vigil in Sydney, holding signs reading, "We are Charlie," that are being seen worldwide in multiple languages, as the French ambassador to Australia, Christophe Lecourtier, spoke to the crowd. The British Parliament also held the signs as they observed a minute of silence in tribute to the Paris victims, while London Mayor Boris Johnson assessed the security situation in his own city.
An initial concern was that there might be a relation between the terrible events in Paris and the returnees from the ISIS, from the Syria and Iraq theatre of conflict. It's too early to say whether there are any such implications. To the best of our knowledge, there is no immediate threat to London, but obviously our thoughts are very much with the people of Paris, with the staff, the employees of Charlie Hebdo, and with the families of the victims.
And in Paris itself last night, the iconic Eiffel Tower was plunged into darkness in memory of those killed and injured in the Charlie Hebdo terror attack. Lights that normally illuminate the 324-meter tall monument were briefly turned off in a symbolic gesture at 8 p.m. local time, as thousands gathered near the site of the attack for a second night of vigils for the victims of the worst terror attack on French soil in decades. Here at home, and turning to election news, and Public Security Minister Yitzhak Aharonovich became the third senior figure in Israel Beitenu over the past 2 weeks to announce his departure from politics, which came in a statement released a short time ago. Aharonovich follows Minister of Tourism Uzi Landau, who announced his own plans to retire, as well as Knesset Law and Constitution Committee Chairman David Rotem. Authorities believe that Aharonovich is not linked to the major corruption scandal that is rocking his party, but he has faced criticism for the failure of the police to stop the recent wave of Arab violence in Jerusalem and the north. Habayit Yehudi chairman Naftali Bennett is defending his party against attacks on the issue of gay marriage. In an interview with Channel 10 last night, Bennett stood by comments from some of his party's primary candidates in opposition of same-sex unions, saying that it's no secret that he wears a kippah and that Judaism doesn't recognize gay marriage, just as it doesn't accept the mixing of milk and meat together as kosher. He added that nothing is going to change that, and he wouldn't be a hypocrite and will continue to voice his beliefs. A few of the faction's candidates have said that they would support civil unions for gay people, but that marriage should keep its traditional meaning. Politicians on the left are calling Habayit Yehudi homophobic. Tzipi Livni pointed out that the faction vetoed a bill that she proposed for all people to love, get married, and start a family, and she accused it of being backward, homophobic, and racist. Meretz leader Zahava Galon wrote on Facebook that Habayit Yehudi candidates are demolishing the basic dignity of hundreds of thousands of Israelis without blinking. IDF Major General Yoav Gallant will be second on the list of the new Kulanu party. During a news conference at Kfar Maccabea last night, faction head Moshe Kachlon said that if people were wondering why Gallant, whom he referred to as a national hero, what he was doing in a party that focuses on socio-economic issues, that the answer is simple and based on both men's belief that without internal strength, there can be no national strength. Gallant said that he joined the party because leadership is measured in actions and not words, and that reforms led by Kachlon serve as an example of accomplishment, referring to Kachlon's push for increased competition in the cell phone industry that significantly reduced costs. Gallant then apologized for having seized public land for his home at Moshav Amikam in actions that derailed plans for his appointment as IDF Chief of Staff in 2011. He said that it is known that he has paid for the mistakes he made in his past and that today he would act differently and is looking to the future with hope. Well, several Anglo-born candidates are hoping to serve in the next Knesset, including native South African Zev Schwartz, who is competing in the Habayit Yehudi primary on January 14th. Arutz Sheva heard from the 47-year-old, who is the founder of the Bible education-based NGO Torah Metzion.
Question, Zev Schwartz, why? It's a whole political world out there. It's not easy.
At the age of 9 years old, I was in Johannesburg and we heard the news of Yoni Netanyahu. And then I realized the importance of no Jew will be left behind. My whole life I'm doing for Am Yisrael. And therefore I have this calling, whatever I do, whether it was a head of World B'nai Akiva, head of Torah Mitzion, or Lev Yehudi in India, we will do everything for every Jew. Baruch Hashem, we've been fortunate. I've got the results, I've got the experience, I've got the people supporting us. So Baruch Hashem, we are very believing that this is going to be an opportunity to put on the agenda that there's a home, a Jewish home for the Olim, a Jewish home that understands their needs. I was a Chayal Boded, I was an Ole, I understand what it means. I know the communities, whether it's Memphis or Mexico or Montevideo or Melbourne, I know them, I know the Russians from Moscow or from Munich. So what I'm saying is somebody can represent them in Knesset, somebody understands their culture, their language, and Bezrat Hashem, global Zionism needs a voice in the Jewish home. There's enough place for everyone. And I say, okay, Bernard is a great leader. He's like this wonderful soccer star, Ronaldo or Messi. But he needs players next to him that they're not only goalies or backfielders. You need somebody who's going to be able to play the game, going to bring in the votes, going to be able to fundraise, connect to people, and know how to play the game together with him. Team. That's what it's all about.
What can you tell us about the experience? Criticism, the opposite?
Okay, so it's challenging. It's to leave your private domain. But that's part of the world of shlichut, is to go out and from the Mishnah, that makom she'en anashim, with a place where there are no people, be that man. So we've taken that calculated risk, my wife and the kids and the family and friends, and it's the same feeling I had at the time. I remember when I went into Lebanon, I was just left Torah Mitzion, appointed head of World B'nai Akiva, and I got a tzav shmoni, I got a calling going to Lebanon. And the same feeling is, don't only look at your private issues, think what the tzibur, the klal, people need, and therefore I've jumped in. I know there's a price to it. I know that all of this costs money, okay, and obviously people are going to support, but we need to, Bezrat Hashem, do what we can do best, and I believe as a shaliach of this way of global Zionism, that it will be good for Am Yisrael, it will be good for the Beit HaYehudi, and I hope to be a trustworthy representative of all of you out there.
The manhunt continues today for the attacker who stabbed a yeshiva student outside the Damascus Gate in Jerusalem's Old City last night before fleeing the scene. The victim is in stable condition at the Sharet Tzedek Hospital in the capital, where medical officials described his condition as not life-threatening, saying that he is aware and communicative. This week, the Israel Democracy Institute published its 12th annual survey of public opinion on the state of Israeli democracy, including trust in government institutions, identification with the state, and the Jewish and democratic characters of the country. IBA's Eli Wogelenter spoke with the Institute's president and former Knesset member, Yochanan Plessner, about the results of the poll.
What we've been measuring over the past decade is the state of Israeli democracy, the health trends within Israeli society. What we've been discovering is that regardless of the political discourse, the real discourse of the Israeli people is very much related to social and economic issues. About 2/3 of Israelis support the renewal of the social protest. There's a major dissatisfaction, sense of alienation from leading economic institutions such as the Treasury, the banks, and the lowest ranking institution in the economic sense are the trade unions. That about 80% of Israelis think that they have way too much power and would like to reform them in some way.
Are you saying that if the political parties now in this campaign season focus on the economic issues, that will get them seats, that's what the people want to hear and talk about?
I'm saying that this is what people are really concerned about. I would imagine that that could be translated into political successes if political parties would be able to focus on those issues. But I think there's also a major sense of distrust vis-a-vis political parties and politicians.
Yes.
So it's not just enough to utter the words. People view those words as hot air coming out of people's mouths unless there's a real credibility behind the issues.
Do we have numbers to support that? How many people, percentage-wise, what they feel about politicians on the level of trust?
Yeah, so we've been measuring it, in the sort of lowest ranking institutions in Israel are the political parties alongside with journalists and media outlets. And the highest ranking institutions remain the Supreme Court, the IDF. And so in this respect, as much as in the Knesset there's an anti-Supreme Court vibe now and then, in the general public there's a different perception and a much higher level of appreciation for this institution. What I found worrying in the figures that we've been accumulating and analyzing is a figure that 58% of Israelis think that it's not sufficient in Israel, that if you work hard you won't move up in life and move ahead, and rather than that other factors other factors rather than merit and hard work are the most dominant factors in moving ahead in life in Israel. And those are signs of, in many ways,
very depressing.
Yeah, of a society that is exactly, that people don't have a sense that there's a real ability of mobilization, of moving upwards, of fairness. And in this respect, and the conclusion is, why make an effort? Why study? It's much better to get connected to this or that. And in this respect, it's something that, as an Israeli society, with the major challenges, both domestic and regional, we can't afford a society that holds on to such perceptions.
Let me ask you, we can't go through all the numbers, just a couple of things that struck me here. The pride in being Israeli, 82% of Israelis, 86% of Israeli Jews are very proud to be Israeli. On the other hand, only 75% and 78% of the Jewish Israelis feel a part of the state of Israel and its problems. If you're proud of being Israel, how are you not feeling a part of the state and its problems?
There's a sort of a disparity that throughout this study we've been identifying, that Israelis on the one hand as individuals are proud, there's a very strong sense of belonging and so on, and at the same time alienation from key institutions that manage and
their lives
and run this state. So we still have a lot to build upon. There's some good news as well, but we have to do a much better job in the areas of dealing with the social and economic issues, instigating structural reforms that will rebuild those institutions and create a sense of relevance, and obviously deal with some of the endemic corruption that, at least by perception, but also unfortunately in reality, characterizes some of our institutions.
Refugees from Syria's civil war are appealing for help after storms in Jordan, Lebanon, and elsewhere in our region destroyed tents in the camps where families are seeking shelter as they gather around fires and attempts to keep warm. There has been increased suffering as the temperatures dip below seasonal norms to 0 Celsius or below amid rain, hail, snow, and windstorms. The United Nations has launched a special winter relief program in efforts to help the refugees, but officials say that the assistance is not enough to meet the needs of the displaced. According to a United Nations report released this week, 5.5 million people were uprooted by war during the first 6 months of 2014. Turning to Gaza, where residents who lost their homes in the summer Hamas war with Israel are also enduring harsh weather conditions. The powerful winds and heavy rains are deepening misery in the Strip, where streets are still strewn with wreckage from the 50-day Operation Protective Edge. Tens of thousands of Palestinians continue to live in United Nations shelters or their damaged homes, with electrical power functioning only around 6 hours a day. Now taking a sharp turn to EuroLeague basketball, and Maccabi Tel Aviv registered a 78-67 victory over Red Star Belgrade at Nokia Arena last night to even up its record in its final 16 group at 1 game apiece. Maccabi's offensive weapons were misfiring for much of the contest, but the Yellow and Blues' defensive play ensured it came out on top. The game was very tight until the end of the third quarter, when Tel Aviv went on a 7-1 run to open up a 7-point advantage as the game entered the final period, and Maccabi managed to keep the visitors at bay the rest of the way. Brian Randall led Maccabi with 16 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 steals, while Yogev Ohayon chipped in with a stellar defense performance, along with 10 points, 8 assists, and 5 rebounds. Just before leaving you this afternoon, we do have these updates. There have been new reports of additional shootings near the area of the Eiffel Tower in Paris, as well as conflicting reports over the number of fatalities and if there were fatalities at the kosher supermarket. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. We hope you'll join us again tomorrow when we'll be here to bring you the latest breaking news from Israel. I'm Erin Viner, wishing you a safe and quiet evening, and Shabbat Shalom from Jerusalem.